For this process of glazing, you can just use normal Galkid, or you can use a mixture of things. I like to use a mixture of Galkid, walnut oil, and Gamsol. For my mixture, I like to use 2 parts Galkid to 1 part walnut oil to 2 parts Gamsol. You can go down a rabbit trail of trying to figure out which potion works best, and that can be really fun, but it can also be a big distraction. Another thing you might consider when you're doing indirect painting is purchasing zinc white. With zinc white, you can more easily mix white into your paint mixtures and achieve a transparent glaze. If you're just using titanium white, the opacity of the pigment is sort of overwhelming and creates a sort of cloudy film. I'm beginning here with some dry brush scumbling. Notice how I'm using a sort of bright pink, but as it is scumbled, it becomes a slightly cooler tone, and it kind of settles the warmth of the previous color a bit. This type of painting can really get out of hand in terms of knowing actually when to stop. One of the main things that I would suggest is making sure that you have enough contrast and visual depth to justify the end to the process. Fortunately, this process is very forgiving and will allow you to make changes. Next, I'm going over with a dark purple glaze that I will begin to wipe away. Notice that as I wipe away, the edges where I'm wiping away are not hard-edged, but rather I'm building up soft edges. This allows me to create an almost brushstroke effect that adds to the realism of the form. The previous glaze was more yellowish. This glaze is more purplish, and that has really created a much more realistic tone as it reacts to the scumbles from the previous layers. This is something that I know will happen going into the process, but the first time you attempt it, it can be extremely confusing to have a really good idea of where you're going. Next, I'm going to work into the hair by glazing in burnt sienna and burnt umber. This will unify the hair tones that I've already established and the differences that I've created through other glazes and scumbles. And I do this both in my facial hair and a little amount of hair that I have on top of my head. All of the lighter colors that I've scumbled in before will now seem to fit in with the rest of the hair in a more cohesive fashion. After I have established that glaze, I'm going in with an opaque light and really establishing certain particular highlights within the hair, which give the impression of individual wild hairs, and in doing so creates a more realistic portrait. After I've established these loose hairs, I'm going into the rest of the face and scumbling in some lighter colors. And at the edge of these lighter color shapes, I am pouncing out the white color with the tip of my finger, as Vincent Desiderio demonstrated in my earlier video on glazing and scumbling. This creates a really beautiful fall off of color, allowing me to create a very realistic sense of skin tone. There's something about the way that the finger interacts with the paint on the canvas that gives it a very particular look. I'm not saying it's the only way that you could possibly do it, but it is extremely effective. Ultimately, were I to continue on this piece, I think that I could enhance certain qualities. But since this is just a demonstration, I'm going to end it right here. I'm extremely happy with this end result, and if you believe in this process and follow the steps as I've outlined them, you'll be extremely pleased with your paintings as well.